I can't read it. You can't read it. I can see it. We missed something for something else. Oh, very
Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. Such a surprise for new board members to have all these people show up for your inauguration. Thank you. Our first order of business is the oath of office. So our three board members, please stand up and take the oath of office. And just repeat after me. I state your name. You're not just state your name, but your statement.
I, Hunter Ansel,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the Constitution of the State of Oregon,
the laws thereof,
the laws thereof,
and the policies of the Lake Health District,
and the policies of the Lake Health District,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of director
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of director
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. You are now got some fresh stuff going here. Okay. First, the second order of business is the election of officers. And what we have are for the chairman, for the secretary, and for the treasurer. And I'm open to nominations.
I would like, if you would be willing, Don, to reappoint you as chairman. Second.
Okay. Then, didn't hear any great sighs out there, but been moved and seconded to nominate me for chairman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. For secretary, I would nominate Gerald. Okay. All those in favor of Gerald as secretary for the next biennium? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And for treasurer, I nominate John.
I second it.
Okay. Moved and seconded for John as treasurer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, we have a vacancy on the Goose Lake Medical Services. With the resignation of Ken Kessner, he was a board member that was on Goose Lake Medical Services, which is a subsidiary of the Lake Health District. I would nominate Jennifer to fulfill that position.
Good for you.
Okay.
Don, could I just interrupt and describe what the makeup of that board is,
Certainly.
so that people understand? I think that might help. So when we formed Goose Lake Medical Services back in 2012, I believe, at the direction of our auditors, we thought that what would be best is if we had representatives from the community, and that was two representatives from the health district, and then the fifth person would be a member from the medical staff, and since it made sense to have that be the chief of staff, that was the description and definition of the makeup of that organization. So while it is at arm's length separate organization, nonprofit. It also is very close to the health district. And when we have our audits, they are, the financials of Goose Lake are included in the financials of Lake Health District. So that's why that situation, the way the board was established, at the recommendation of our attorneys. And
Second that nomination.
Okay, well, this is an appointment, so, you know, it's, I get to appoint her. So she is now.
And I'm willing to.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Jennifer, for stepping up and stepping in. So now I'd like to go to the board reports, but one of the first thing I'd like to do is to poll the board in regard to the burn grant, the building acquisition, and I'd like to get your feelings on that, but I'm going to recommend that the building acquisition on hold until we do our additional due diligence. So far, we have the burn grant is in, but we have not spent but a few $1,000s of burn grant money. We have not purchased a building, and I'm going to recommend that we put the building acquisition on hold until we do additional due diligence and get additional community input, which I see coming out there. We have to acknowledge that the burn grant money cannot be used for Lake Health District purposes. It is a separate, complete county operation in which the district contracts with the county to help them take care of that money and take care of the services that we are to provide by law for the community. Hey, Jane, how do you feel?
I do not feel that we should go forward with this acquisition.
Okay.
I feel the same as Jane.
I'd be willing to put it on hold, however, I think that we still have lots of opportunity there for both the district and the community.
Okay.
I think we should pass on the Hereford building. With all that we've got going on to get our we need to get focus on getting our finances in order and our billing office working smoothly, and that's a distraction I don't think we need right now. Now, if a year from now we've got those things solved, we can take a look at it then, but I think it's in the best interest of the district to pass on the Hereford building.
Okay. So with that in mind, I think we, Charlie, you're clear with what we're directed to
Absolutely.
do? Okay. Any questions?
No.
Don,
So
Mr. Chairman,
wait, there's no public comment yet. I'd ask you to wait until we're done.
okay, I thought I read somewhere where you took public comment on items of business transpired as
Right
well
now,
as public comment, so I'm sorry.
I'm asking you to wait. You'll get your chance, but I'm asking you to wait until we get through with our board comments, okay? It is on the agenda. Okay. And John, you wanted to say a few things about adult foster care and home health and hospice.
Yeah, so last Tuesday, I guess it was, we had our community meeting, and we came and told you guys all our problems and a lot of bad news. And I thought it was important that we take a minute and let you know tonight a little bit about some of the things that we've been working on since then, some of the developments, and just kind of what some of the status that has changed since then. And I guess starting with home health and hospice, in fact, I was talking to Jerry Evans right before I came into the meeting.
Wait, can you speak up?
Sure. I was just talking to Jerry Evans, who's one of the board members of the Collins McDonald Trust, and they've reached out and said they would like to help the community, Lake County community. And I also talked to Paul Harlan, who's another trustee, and they would like to support finding ways to keep home health and hospice going in Lake County. It may not look the same as it did before. It could involve Tyson and some paramedics getting involved in home health. They may need some additional training. But I don't have all the answers, but they've generously stepped forward and says, get us a proposal of what you need to keep that going, and we'll try to work with you to do that. So I think that's a very neat development for our community, because I really believe that if somebody wants to die with dignity in their own home, the district ought to try to help them, and we ought to try to find a way to do that. So I think I don't have the answers yet of when it's going to happen. Right now it's closed. Is it, Charlie? But we're going to try to get this worked out with them as soon as we can, and we'll be announcing to you guys what it's going to look like and how it might work.
Thank you.
Another area that we're looking at is if we, when we close down these buildings, what do we do with them? And one of the things that we're looking at, I don't have the answers to this yet, but Lakeview has one adult foster care facility in town, and it's full. And for the most part, they don't take Medicaid. But we are exploring, what if we made one of these buildings available for adult foster care? Maybe we just charge them utilities till we get a long-term solution to open up the long-term care. One of the challenges is these buildings, there are 3 buildings and there's 12 rooms in each building, or 36 rooms. Adult foster care is limited to no more than 5 patients with the family that takes care of them. So unfortunately this week was the 4th of July weekend, and so most people that have any seniority didn't work this week. Can't get ready to return calls. So, but what we were looking at is, what if we got an exception that said we take one of these buildings and since it holds 12, but there's only 1 kitchen, to get an exception from the state to have 2 adult foster cares in 1 building, 5 and 5, and then the families that take care of them. My first answer, but it's fairly low level, is no. Because they said, no, we're not making an exception, because once you get past 5, that's adult foster care, that's the limit. Once you get past that, you go into long-term care facilities and other sets of rules. But hopefully, and the gal who I was trying to get hold of today called me back and said, oh, I'm out by 2, and I'll be gone, won't be back till next Monday. So I don't have the answers, but that's something we would be open to explore, to see if that makes sense, and if there's somebody in the community that might want to open that, come talk to us once these buildings get empty. It wouldn't be a long-term solution, but it may be a short-term solution to help our community out. So those are a couple of things that I just want to report on that we've been working on since our community meeting last week. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
So Jane, you have an angle on the political situation.
I do.
It's quite knowledgeable at the state level.
Okay. I talked to Senator Finley and Representative Owens. There is a possibility, and I want to stress possibility, that we could get, use the right term, and of course I have pages count like I should. Where did I put it? That we could get cost-based reimbursement for Medicaid for if we go together with the 3 Frontier Type A hospitals that are running nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities in rural Oregon. Those are us, John Day, and Hepner, who is running not really a nursing home, but it's, and Charlie explained this to me, and I didn't quite understand it, and then I heard it today too. Hepner's running kind of a hybrid. They're doing this out of their swing beds. But I've talked to, I'm running up the same thing that John is, 4th of July week. So I have not had a chance to talk to John Day. But I did talk to somebody that was very knowledgeable about what is happening there, but I have not talked to the exact right person to say, yes, we will go with you to ask for this. What we would do is we would go to the emergency board of the legislature and we would ask for cost-based reimbursement for this year, or this session of the legislature. That's different, so we would not ask for a big community push, because that's different than going to the actual legislature. This is something the agency would ask for, and then we would go and ask in the next session of the legislature. That's when we need a push. Again, it's a hope. It's not a for sure thing that would happen, but it is done, as Charlie pointed out at the meeting last week. It is done in other states. It's done in Alaska, and it's done in California. Not California, yeah. So it's not brand new, but it's something that Representative Owens and Senator Finley are very willing to help us out to try to get. And so that's where we are right now. We have to get our little coalition together. I don't think it will be hard. I cannot imagine that the other two type A, frontier type A hospitals will not want to join us. So that's where we are right now. The emergency board meets in September.
Thank you, Jane, very good.
Yes.
Now we can open to public comment. If we have so many people who want to comment, I would ask that the ones that already made comments at the previous public meeting, let others step forward. If it appears that it's going to take a long time to go through all the public comments, that we may just simply call for another public meeting where we can all get together and spend more time going through the issues that are facing the district and the community. And it's a community we all know and love, but I don't want to jam up this meeting with a long, involved public comment period. So I would ask that any public comment be kept to 3 minutes. You may not expect an answer. We're taking the input. And if it goes way too long, I'll have to cut it short so we can still continue to get board business done later this evening. So with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment. If you want to make a statement, state your name and come on forward. Come up and let everybody see who you are.
Everybody sees who I am. Actually, I just wanted to follow up with what I was wanting to ask when you were talking about the Hereford building. And that was, you said something, Dawn, about needs to do the due diligence.
Sure.
And I'm curious as to what that due diligence is. Are you hiring a professional, an archaeologist, an engineer to actually look at that building and determine what its shortfalls are, what has to be done in order to occupy a piece of it? And I would hope that any plan that you may have, if you go forward with that in the future, maybe at least addresses future plans on what to do with the rest of the building. As most of you know, I was town manager for quite some time and kind of lived adjacent to that building, have been in it a few times, looked at it for other purposes in the past, and I can tell you that I'd be very surprised at the amount of money that you were talking about before is anywhere near enough to even occupy the bottom floor, let alone do the things that need to be done to
The primary thing is the roof and the bottom floor, and then the rest we would have to.
But Don, you guys, do you understand that there has to be seismic retrofit? There's probably asbestos, there's mold in the basement, there's structural damage to the ceiling structure that holds the roof up. There are lateral supports that are problems in the building. You're probably going to have to sprinkle the whole thing in order to make it safe for a public building in the future. There's a list of 10 or 12 things, not counting the unknown things that a professional will run into when they do that. So I hope that their due diligence is not asking Charlie or somebody else to just get us an estimate on what's going to cost to do the roof, but actually look at the building and see what you're getting us into. You're talking about closing facilities that you've been operating for 50 years.
Okay,
And
entirely separate issue.
well, I'm going to tie them together.
Entirely separate issue.
And then you're talking about taking on another one where's our confidence level that you can't do that, but you can do that? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. And we hear you loud and clear, that's why it's going on.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments?
I have just a question.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time in my head trying to figure out how the Goose Lake Medical Services Board, whether it be advisory or otherwise, so they're appointed, but it's like a separate entity and they report to the board. So the health district is the one who made the final decision to close long-term care, or I'm just having a hard time in my head separating them.
Could you address the legal issue between the district and the Goose Lake Board?
Sure. Could you say your name again?
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle Totten.
Thank you, Michelle. So, one of the things that we did, can you all hear me?
No.
No, you can't hear me?
Now you better.
Okay. So, you have to understand a little bit about the complexity of healthcare financing. So the hospital is called a critical access hospital, and Medicare pays our costs, cost-based. It's not exactly 100% cost-based, but it's about 97%. But Medicare doesn't pay for anybody to have a baby. It pays for Medicare services. So Medicaid pays for those people that have babies that are not covered by regular insurance. Medicaid also, that's a state program, that pays our costs. It's a cost-based program. Long-term care is not. That we get paid a set amount per day for the people that we take care of. Now, sometimes if a person is a little sicker, we can bill a little bit more, but generally not. So one of the things that we try to do is to find the best way to enhance and prove that our costs for the hospital are being maximized. And when long-term care was attached to the hospital, a lot of our costs were spread between long-term care and the hospital. So, like heating or electricity, it's done by square footage. And so, if we didn't have that building, then all of the square footage and all the costs here would be treated as improvement for the cost for the hospital. So when we separated long-term care from the hospital, it was to improve the payments for the hospital. We couldn't do anything about improving the payments for long-term care. So at the recommendation of our attorneys and our auditors that spend all their time helping us maximize payments for the hospital, they said we need to form a separate organization. So it's a nonprofit organization. So it's not a public entity, but it is still a nonprofit. And the purpose was, again, to improve how we get paid for the hospital. Because that's where the most of our costs are, and we want to keep that as strong as we can. And we separated out the costs for long-term care. What we also did is we set up, when we originally set up the retirement plan for all the employees here, it's a very expensive process, and it didn't make sense to set up a separate pension plan and a separate health plan and all the components of that. So all of the long-term care employees, or Lakeview Garden employees, are actually what are called leased employees. They work for the health district, and then we lease the cost of them to Lakeview Gardens. So that's why we set this separate but very close relationship. And it has worked well. It has really enhanced the payments for the hospital. It did not change long-term care. Does that help answer that question?
It does. So if they're a nonprofit, then their meetings would be open to the public?
So the public meeting laws are based on public institutions. All nonprofit organizations, not all are open to the public, they're just nonprofits. And then we have lots of nonprofits that meet in the community. I don't know as how we don't disinvite people, but we don't go out of our way to invite a lot of people, because take the food share, or take a church that has a board. It's a nonprofit, but you don't generally invite the public. You invite the people that are interested. That's the reason for it. Okay?
One more, I'm sorry. Do you have no private pay in long-term care? You address Medicaid and Medicare, but no private?
As of this moment, that's correct.
Okay.
If that has not been true in the past.
That is correct. In the past, there have been private pay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. But the question was today.
Right, currently.
And I don't want to mislead anybody, but yes, in the past we have. One of the things that is a ruling within the state, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but if a long-term care facility has less than 85% of all of the residents that are on Medicaid, so 85 or less, 85% are Medicaid, we have to pay the state $150,000 in tax. If it is over 85, we don't pay that tax. And those are the rules. So if we have two private pay patients or residents, then we pay that $150,000 tax.
Okay, so we have one in the back.
Yeah, hi, Charlotte Branham. My mother-in-law, Isla Jean, sorry, she's 50% of that two rules. She is a private pay at Lily House. I have a couple questions. When Ms. O'Keefe, I think it was, briefed on the cost-based reimbursement, you said that that meeting is not until September, but it's my understanding we're going to have to move my mother-in-law before September. So it's kind of a Montanix, right?
I can't change that meeting.
But, okay, so the second question, I guess, goes to Mr., I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Charlie. You told us in the meeting at Lily House that those letters had gone out to the families and residents effective 26 June, and that we had to plan on moving my mother-in-law by the 26th of August or earlier. And we still, to this date, neither my husband or I or my mother-in-law has received any letter other than the first one that was retracted, saying that she had to go to July 20th. So is there truly a June 26th letter? Or am I actually still working with the deadline of August 26th? Just trying to figure out where to go.
So let me try and answer that question. Number one, your mother is in assisted living.
Correct.
Okay. The lady asked about long-term care.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought for assisted living.
Two different components. We want to be clear that there are two different rules. In assisted living, the residents that are there, the law says, the state says, that 60 days notice, and that is different than long-term care. The 60-day notice, the letter that Mary Margaret says that she didn't get, we provided that letter, and I'm sorry you haven't gotten it. I will make sure you get it tonight if you
Okay,
want.
thank you.
Because Lauren prepared them, and we have them, so maybe Lauren didn't prepare them. But anyway.
Well, hold on just a moment. Did prepare the letters for the long-term care patients, because that's the list that I was given, and I was just given the list for the assisted living. So I will be preparing those tomorrow to go out. I apologize, did
So
not
it'll be
receive
60
that
days
until
from
today.
tomorrow then?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
So then the rule for long-term care is that once the plan is adopted by the state, then it is 90 days from that date. One of the things, though, that is, that's part of this process is the state is helping a lot of people move. So the state is very anxious that there would be only one person, and it might be your mother that's there, and they don't want to allow that to happen. So they're trying to, because that's not good for the environment, it's not good for the residents. So they're trying to make sure that there isn't one person left. So
And-
that date may change.
And I do understand that, but the only option we feel as her children, since there is nobody else in this area, Paisley's been her home for 80 years. This is where her friends are. If she can't, she's not willing to go to Bend or Klamath because she won't see anyone. So our only option is to move her to Florida. I don't want to have to bring her back if she manages to make all this work. And
Ma'am,
yes.
what I'm talking about is long-term care.
Okay, so there's no plans at all on assisted living? Or there's no irons in the fire or whatever you want to call it for the assisted living piece?
I don't.
So the answer to that is if we can get cost-based reimbursement for long-term care, and we've been trying to do that, it's hard to get the state to change, then there would be enough money to also have assisted living.
Isn't it turned out 2 of the houses are
Long-term care.
care and 1 house is assisted living?
Yes.
Right.
And if we would open, we would probably do the same thing.
But the earliest we would know that would be September.
Unfortunately.
They're probably going to lose their only private pay.
Cindy Lamb. Do you get donations for the long-term care?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
That's what I thought. They used to, so I just was curious if they still got donations.
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Okay.
Okay.
Barb Martindale. Okay, so we hold that for a second. Is there a way that you guys can work with us and maybe extend out that notice to after September until after that meeting and work with the public instead of just booting them out? Because I have friends, they have people in there and they cannot find any place in Oregon for these old folks. And like this gal said back here, her mother has been, this is her home, not those houses, wherever they are back there, not those houses, but Lake County is her home. So, you know, and as a community, I really do feel, you know, we need to step up for our older folk anyway. But, you know, they're paying for their service, and it's unfortunate that Medicare, Medicaid, whatever that issue is going on there. But until that meeting happens in September, would you guys consider extending out that notice until after that meeting? I mean, just, it would be amazing. That way maybe we can work something out together. And instead of having somebody who's lived here 80 years go clear to Florida. I mean, that's just not right, you guys. And at the end of the day, you know, and this is for you, Gerald, because I love you. What would Jesus do? And what would God do with those folks? So that's all. Thank you.
Other comments?
Bert Young, I've got 2 comments. One, I wanted to find out how EMS is financially. I heard that Warner Creek facility had a patient inmate they had to move out of town, transport, and there was not a backup. EMS could not take them because there was not a backup, so Warner Creek had to provide their own transportation. So is EMS now under the hospital? Is it financially stable? And my second question is billing, reimbursement, like Medicare stuff. If it's over a year old and the patient is billed, they call Medicare, and Medicare says hospital has to eat it. How much of this is going on through billing that's being rejected because of late billing? Those are 2 questions. Thank you.
If I can answer the first one about transporting for Warner Creek. So Warner Creek, as part of the state, almost always does their own transportation. So Tyson, would we have ever transported someone from Warner Creek?
This incident in particular, yes, it was an inmate that was brought in here with a dislocated elbow. Unfortunately, due to staffing issues, we didn't have enough crew to staff a secondary ambulance to take the patient to Bend. So the patient was discharged and Warner Creek transported him up to St. Charles.
So it's not that we aren't, the EMS is not losing money. It's a cost-based program also. So one of the realities was that when before we took over, it was an all-volunteer program. And unfortunately, the volunteers weren't able to do many of the transports to take someone to Bend or the plant. The patients had to find other ways of getting. In terms of the billing issues, we have billing issues. Part of it is our use of this new software system called Cerner. There are a lot of problems with it. But we also have lots of circumstances where the insurance companies deny a claim because they don't have enough information, and we go back and forth providing it, and then there's a denial. So oftentimes, it takes longer than we would ever expect. Our crew, our billing office, and our revenue cycle, we call that, team, they work very hard at trying to get our claims out and get them out timely.
Do you have a dollar amount of what's lost per year? Is that ever tracked?
It is tracked. It's tracked a lot. And it changes all the time. As you see, you will see the financials that we have today. Okay?
Okay. Last question, okay?
Okay. Well, when I did billing, I did follow up. As long as that bill is at Medicare, Medicaid, or the insurance companies in a timely manner, we don't have that problem. But if they get it not in a timely manner, that's when we have problems. And then you have to take the loss. So if it's not done within a year, you have to take that loss.
Well, we understand that, and there's a lot more than just timely manner. Medicare and the billing, you know, Blue Cross, they're getting a lot more technical.
Do you guys have Cerner that's helping you to get this billing problem straightened out?
Yes, but Cerner got taken over by Oracle. The team changed, so we are looking at other alternatives for helping us get the billing out correctly. And it is taking time.
These other hospitals have them, and maybe some of the people that are at those facilities could come in and help train and help fix it.
Yeah.
Because they're billing, you know, are they having the same problems you're having with it?
Other hospitals? I don't know.
So that's something that should be checked into.
I just see somebody else has their hand up.
I'm Shirley Smith. I just have the addition to a question that was already asked, and I didn't hear an answer to that question. He asked, is the bills that are rejected and never paid tracked? Charlie replied, yes, but it changes as we go. Certainly, at the end of the year, how many of our bills in dollars amount we ate because they were not billed and paid? He asked that question and we never heard an answer to it. What was it?
I don't have the answer.
Neither do I.
We can provide that answer, just not right now. Be happy to do that.
Okay. Yes.
I don't really feel that you have any resolutions, and we haven't even touched on hospice or home health. What do you see for that? Can you get private contractors to make bids towards that? What's your outlook on that?
We have reached out to the other.
You'll have to talk louder.
Yeah, we have reached out to other, like Klamath Health and Hospice and Harney County. Harney County is run by the county itself. And of course, Harney has about, in that immediate hospital area, about twice the size of what we have, so they don't have the economy of scale that we've got. Lack of economy of scale, yeah, thank you. So we are reaching out. Again, it's a slow process, and I don't have an answer for you, but we're looking. Okay, we're paddling as hard as we can.
Don't you think you should have started this when you first knew that Woody Pipeline
Hindsight is 100%.
was going to file bankruptcy? I mean, that was a year ago people were talking about this. You've had a whole year to hire private contractors maybe to come in or take bids on these jobs, open them up. We shouldn't be having to put 36 of our people out of work and move these people. We really shouldn't have to be doing that.
So if I
It's
could
really
answer,
disappointing.
if I could.
You're disappointing. For CEO, I think you should really resign, honestly.
So you asked two questions and I might try to answer them. First is home health and hospice.
Speak up.
I should speak a little louder?
Yes, you should.
Okay. First, on home health and hospice. We do have different ways that we can deliver home visits, and we can do that through our rural health clinic. We looked at doing that a year ago, and we had some resistance, but we are able to do that now. And so we will be able to provide not all the services that home health could deliver, but many of them. A lot of our residents have also been getting rehab services in the home. And we're working to find ways that we can do that. Rather than have people come into the hospital, to come into the rehab department for service. There are ways that we can do that. Now, in terms of hospice, we currently have situations where sometimes patients will come into the hospital and they will get hospice care in the hospital. That has been going on for quite some time. And the hard part, of course, is if we don't get paid enough, it's hard to find the money for it, but it's also, it's hard to find the nurses to provide this service. At present, we don't have a nurse that can deliver that care. And finding one is hard. And
That's what you get paid for. It's your job to overcome all these obstacles. And you should have acted on it a year ago. And traveling nurses isn't really what's going to work. And just like what Terry told you, that he has to tell people that that doesn't really apply. Maybe you didn't hear that.
I think it would be marvelous if we could find more people, more nurses to work. And if anyone has great suggestions on how we can hire more, I'd be very happy to hear it.
Local one that's working in altruist because you wouldn't hire.
But chase them off.
Ellen?
I'm Ellen Jones, and I've been on the phone to two different entities about hospice, and I would like to find out who's running point on your hospice care, because I'd like to confer with them and give them the information that I have.
That person is Krista Harrington. Krista Harrington, and we can get that number for you after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Don?
Yes.
Lori Crocker. I just like to dispel rumors, and I think we need some answers. I'd like to follow up on Michelle, what she had to say about the Goose Lake board. One of the rumors is, and I think that rather than just operate in a rumor mill, maybe you can answer it for us. How often does that board meet? It meets quarterly. And so if they were supposed to meet tonight, at their last quarterly meeting, did they recommend to this board that everything be dissolved in long-term care and hospice. What was their role in that?
Gerald's on that board.
What we do is meet quarterly, and there was, of course, the financials showing that, yes, we are continuing to lose money. There was not a recommendation either way on what should transpire.
So were they aware then, as a board, that this board was going to dissolve everything? I just think that it's better
Not at that
to-
time.
Pardon?
No, not at that time.
Not at that time.
So I have a question.
Mike?
Mike McGowan. So if it's a separate legal entity operated by a separate board of directors, and if that legal entity didn't take a legal action to close down the long-term care facility which that legal entity owns, how can the decision have been taken? And who took that decision?
So I can answer that. So Lakeland Gardens leases the location. The employees are leased. And it becomes a decision of how do we financially afford this. And since we cannot get Medicare or Medicaid to pay the additional amount needed, was my recommendation to the board. And the board said you have to make that decision, and that is to close that down because we cannot sustain the losses for long-term care. That's why.
I didn't ask that question. So the question I asked was, did the owner of the long-term care facility take the decision, or did the hospital district take the decision?
Goose Lake does not own the long-term care facility.
Which facility? That's an advisory board as well.
It doesn't operate it?
The hospital operates it.
So then what's the point of having a separate nonprofit entity that's independent of the hospital? I thought you said earlier that the nonprofit, you were recommended that it be held separately for financial reasons that would advantage the hospital. The question I'm asking is, who operates, or does the hospital just make all the decisions? And if that's the case, might be fine, but then what's the point of having a separate board of directors for a separate legal nonprofit entity?
When it was originally developed, it was meant to be very separate. It turns out that as the rules for GASB changed, for the accounting rules, now it's wound up together so that the public is not misled to say, well, the district does well, but long-term care loses a lot of money. And so that's why they're combined in the audit. Okay? That's why it's a separate entity, but it is really run by the hospital.
My understanding is an advisory.
It's an advisory board.
Well, they should have been included in the decision. I mean, for their input. I mean, that's my opinion. If they're an advisory board, they're there for you to help advise you on some of those issues.
Well, is the Alturas Clinic part of that?
The Alturas Clinic has been closed for some time. It is no longer operating.
This year.
Does it cost you any money?
The Alturas Clinic cost us
The
money?
Alturas Clinic is closed?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Does it cost you?
my insurance company contacted me because, my secondary insurance, because they were billed from the Alturas, I mean, they paid the hospital, but it came under the Alturas Clinic and they didn't understand.
And I have to look at the timing
I
on
don't
that.
understand either, I have to say, but I'm looking for an answer. But they were paid by the hospital. But they questioned me, and I go, I don't know, because I don't go to Alturas to the clinic. So that's why I thought it was under that board.
Lori, if we could talk about that
Okay,
outside of the meeting.
all right, thanks.
Okay, last question, we're going on.
Okay, sorry, this is Shirley Smith again.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I heard something, I did not know if it was true or not, so I'm going to ask you for clarification. I heard that we, as the hospital, borrowed from the government a sum of in the neighborhood of like $5 million several years ago, and that in order to repay that debt, part of our payments from Medicare and Medicaid would be reduced to pay off that debt. True or false?
Well, there's a couple of different issues in there. If you're talking about the payroll protection program, we received some $5 million when we applied for it in 2020. Many people here in small organizations also applied for and received payroll protection money. And that money went toward maintaining our payroll during the COVID time. It helped tremendously. Part of that money was disallowed, and we had to repay some of the payroll protection program. And correct me, Charlie, it's like $800,000 or so we had to repay, or $400,000. Anyway, we had to repay some of that. The second thing is there was some COVID relief, an advance from CMS that came in. They advanced us what they estimated our costs would be, so that we were able to use those advances. Those advances have to be repaid over time. That's, I believe we finished repaying them now. But it did put a whole chunk of money into the district, and we were able to continue our operations without much problem during COVID. Now that money is gone. Okay? And it's all in the audit reports, and you get my territory.
But my
when you go in
question
the audit
also
reports.
was,
I'd be happy to go through it.
is that why we're getting less money from Medicaid and Medicare? Because
that
the
was-
money was to repay that loan?
It's been, yeah, that money was withheld from reimbursements from Medicare up until 2 months ago. Okay, so we did repay that money. We repaid the payroll protection program amounts, but we got to retain out of the payroll protection over $4 million. Okay, that went directly to salaries. Okay.
Can I ask one more thing? One more thing, Mr. Dodd.
Barbara, you've been on the floor a lot, but go ahead.
Thank you. As part of my research, I had discovered that LH Lake District Hospital is currently in default for about $10 million. And that was about the beginning of 2023. I was looking through the board meetings and videos and stuff, and I don't think I saw any of that in the Lakeview. What was that?
I'm not aware of any default in the amount of $10 million.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yep. Okay.
Hi, sorry. Kelsey Bostwick. I just have a quick question. As an employee of St. Charles, we were in a pickle coming out of COVID too. And we actually, managers and above, took a 5% pay cut across the board to get our healthcare system out, because those are the people that get a lot of compensation. Have we considered anything like that to help bolster our funds?
That not.
At this time, we have not.
We all did it for 6 months.
That might be a good suggestion.
Executives did it for a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Okay. Now, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. It's approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the last meeting and our calendar, which we will sign for the signing. For those who don't know, every week we sign the checks. We alternate. Board members go in and help sign the checks and look over the financials and have a one-on-one with Charlie so that they've got good communication. It's done on a regular basis, so we have that calendar set up for each member to go in and talk to Charlie and sign the checks. So we've got a good, better understanding with the board and Charlie. Okay. So with that, I believe that the minutes, did you have an adjustment to the minutes?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna get the times, but we just need to know, instead of just going straight to adjournment, that you went into executive session and then came out, so.
Okay. Any other adjustments?
I didn't see any, so I suggest with that change made, we accept consent.
Second. Okay, been moved and seconded with the change for the executive session to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, next item would be the board governance policy. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the governance policy? Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't 65, was it? Anyway, it was a lot. So we're looking at having a board training session coming up, and that I think Charlie will talk about that a little bit later. But that'll help with the board governance. So
is Charlie going to talk about this at all, or?
Yeah, he is. Yep. That'll be in his report. Yeah. Well, this is just the approval of the board governance policy right now. Well, I was talking about we're going to have a board training session. But if you want him to explain the board governance policy, that's going to take quite some time.
Well, my question really is, I assume there was one before.
Oh, yeah.
And was there a reason that this came out today? Because there's things that had to change, or just a little background?
Yeah, I mean, sir. Sean Cosby, I'm the Compliance Risk and Security Manager for the district. This is the same policy that was signed back in 2012. However, both the federal government and state governments typically renew their policies on a 5-year basis. That way they can keep them up to date and keep everything current with the current laws. This is just a reissuance and re-signing of the 2012.
You have updates for current regulations and laws?
Yes, sir.
And I think you gave us a highlighted section where the updates were. Okay, and this, I mean, in case people want to read it, there's the governance policy. We can give you copies if you'd like. Okay. So what I'm looking for is an approval of this policy.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We're moved and seconded by our newest members to approve the Lake District Board Governance Policy as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. The May 23 financial report. We have a new CFO. Unfortunately, his father has fallen ill, and so he could not be here tonight, but it's Prahan Kumarasamy. And he's new in the saddle, and he's learning the tricks. He's impressed me with the ability to work with Cerner and with our revenue cycle to address the problems that we've got with the billing, collections, all of the gory details that go into it. So we're looking at some, hopefully, in the next couple of months, we're going to get some significant improvement in our billing and collection process. So we're not standing idle, we're working forward. But it's too bad that Prahan is not here. I'd like to have presented it to you, but I think we had a picture up here earlier. But he's a good man. I think he's going to do us a good job.
He has been on Zoom, but it'll be hard to make the presentation.
Okay.
So,
Charlie, you're going to give the presentation.
I will do the best that I can. So, not everybody can see this because it's a little bit on our back. This is a tracking report that we look at every month. And we look at the volume of patients that we have and that we take care of. So, I can just point out for those that haven't seen this. So our year is July 1 to June 30. That's the fiscal year. So we start out July on this side, and this is through May. June information, has not come out yet. That'll be reported in August, so we're always a month back. When we look at our trends, you can see that in 2022, in July, maybe you can't see, but we started out with 325 patients in acute care. We now have, in May, we had 410 in acute care, and that was in 2022. In 2023, that number is now 378. So it's quite a drop of about 32 patients year over year. Our part to keep in mind with our volume differences is what happened during COVID. During COVID, there were a lot of things that were different. Dr. Bradbury here, who was here and able to do only emergency surgeries. So he wasn't able to do what was called elective. Now, as a good surgeon, he would say, nobody elects to have surgery. So most everything is non-elective. But that volume has changed, and we're getting closer to what it was like pre-COVID. Not quite, but it's similar. Our clinic's volume in the month of May was up 270 patients. Our other outpatient services, that is lab, that is x-ray, that is rehabilitation, and other kinds of services that we provide, that we count as outpatient services. And that has dropped 600 visits in the month of May, year over year. Okay? So our volume has, as you can see in this drawing, this is sort of a combination. We're seeing a drop in volume, year over year.
Total volume is down 7,400.
Total volume is down 7,400, that is correct. When we look at this report, again, I apologize, you're far back. This is how much we charge in our gross revenue. And we look at that from 2000 is the top row, 2021, 22, 23. And each month, July through May, we track that number, look at the comparisons, and this report shows we're in the blue line for this year, and so that's 2023, 22, 21, and 20. So you can see, actually, the month of May was one of our highest months in revenue in terms of what we were charging. Some of that is based on the illnesses of the patients, some of that is just volume. The next part, when you asked how much do we write off and why do we write off, this is a complicated report that looks at, from what we charge, not everything do we get paid for. This is called there's a combination of contractual adjustments, bad debt, and charity. What's the difference between those? Okay? So because we are, when we bill, if we bill something for $1,000, if the insurance company says we're going to pay you $80 or $800, instead of $1,800, that $200 that is different, that's called a contractual adjustment. So the contract says we're not going to pay you $1,000, we're going to pay you $800. That's that $200. The next part, and we break that out by whether it's home health and hospice, inpatient, outpatient, and then capitation. Capitation is another way that it's a complicated way we get paid. What that says is for whatever the cost would be that we would deliver care in a given year, divide that by 12, we get paid that amount for one person in that month. So it's 1/12. That's what capitation means. Now that doesn't always mean that that person is going to come in once every month for 12 months. So they may come in twice in the year, and we get paid the same amount during the year, but we don't get service, we don't deliver services. It's an average number. So that's what that capitation adjustment is. Then when we talk about charity care and bad debt, the difference between charity care and bad debt is if you show up to the emergency room and say, I don't have a nickel, we say that's charity care, we're gonna provide care to you. But if you show up in the emergency room and say, I promise to pay, and then don't, that's bad debt. Very similar, we do treat it very similar, but it's just how we handle it. Then we have administrative write-offs. Those are the parts where when the staff when they're looking at a bill and they were supposed to get a certain amount, or there was a bill was not paid timely or not billed timely, that's an administrative write-off. So we track that. So when we look at that, it varies every month. In the month of May, our gross revenue was $4,893,000. We had these adjustments, and that gave us a net amount of $3,063,000 with all these adjustments. The part that we are focusing on intently is why do we have such high numbers in our contractual adjustments? And there's a lot of reasons, and a lot of them are inappropriate, but we have to fix it, and we work on it all the time. And we have some really capable people working on it all the time, and it's complicated. So it isn't as though they're not doing their job. In our collections, we had one of our worst months. As you can see, we collected $2,241,000. Now, when we think about how do collections work, if you go into the hospital in January, it takes about 90 days before we actually get paid. It takes about 20 to 30 days to get the bill prepared. The doctor to do all his documentation, all of the materials that get put together, and then get the bill to the right place. And then if it doesn't go to the right place, then it comes back. So about 90 days is what that normal time period is. So these bills from May occurred in February or in January. So there's a delay. So we didn't have a good month in terms of what our collections were. Days cash on hand. This is a big problem that we have. We're talking with our banks to try and help us. And what we can see, for those that can see this, in July of 2020, our cash days on hand were 59. And they have changed as we've had cash, as we've had COVID dollars, as we've had different things. We are currently at 19. That is not acceptable. And we have a big problem with it. So why do we have that? When we go to our profit and loss, this is the part that we show this report is the same report every single month. So those of you that have seen it the first time, okay, every time you come to the board meeting, we present this information, whether it's good or bad. As you can see, in the month of May, we had $4.8 million, almost 4.9. We collected $3 million. These are where our wages are, $1.9 million in that month. And we had contract labor of $665,000. Those are the people that, while that may not be a big problem in Bend, it is a big problem throughout the country. We are short a dozen nurses right now. And we have people that are coming that we pay a great deal of money to come here because we are open 24/7 and we cannot find predominantly nurses.
That's a dozen nurses just in the hospital, not the clinic.
That's correct.
Just in the hospital.
That's correct.
There are 12 openings.
Right now. And remember, we're open 24/7. So a lot of times, those are the nurses that work at nights. Those are the nurses that work on the weekends. When our staff says, you know what, I've already put in my time. I don't want to work all the time. Then we have medical expenses, utilities, all that kind of thing. You may have heard me say in the past, this year was a horrible year from our utility standpoint. Our geothermal system that we leased from the town didn't work. And it quit in November, and it didn't get started up again until just before February. That cost us $250,000 in propane costs. It's astounding. But the system is now working, thankfully. The school also experienced a little downtime for that very same reason. And we look at, these are the items below our expenses that are different kinds of, this shows our tax revenue, and it shows bank fees, other grant information. The bottom line is that we lost, for the month, $263,000. The month before, the loss was $839,000. Year to date, it's $2,564,000. That is not sustainable. We have to make changes. We cannot keep the business going if that continues. And I'm sorry to say, this is happening to hospitals across the country. So if anybody doesn't know that, I would encourage you to look at not just social media, but look at what the literature is saying, what's happening in the country. This is another example of our expenses, monthly expenses. This is our balance sheet that shows one of our big problems. You can see right here, $9 million. That's money that we are trying to collect. We've delivered services, and our billing staff is working very hard to get those bills out to collect that money. We anticipate that we'll collect a great deal of it. We're just not collecting enough of it. We have to fix that. Our long-term liabilities, that's what we have the loans with Washington Federal and from bond to the community and other components of that. And so you can see the difference from April and May. A lot of changes, but our big part is our accounts receivable. Any questions?
My name is Steve Gulkin. You saw that there was a $2 million deficit. Is that all on the hospital side? Because it's been put on the long-term care. That long-term care itself lost $2 million. It looks like the hospital did.
The hospital is going to report the information together. So while we show it separately, that still gets included.
So those figures in term, they go to both the hospital and the long-term?
I'm sorry, that is just for the hospital. Long-term care, I'll show that in a second.
That'll be coming up, so you'll bear with us and go through the
Okay.
process.
Any other questions on this?
But yeah, this does not include long-term care.
I'm going to show long-term care right now. Okay? So in long-term care, again, I apologize for the numbers being small. The revenue in the month of May was $208,000, almost $209,000. That's net. You can see the difference between long-term care was $167,000 and assisted living was $56,000. We had the revenue deductions bringing us to $208,000. Our labor costs, wages and benefits, were $189,000. But our contract labor was $82,000. When we look at year to date, that was $885,000 in contract labor. Again, we think that we're going to find nurses that can work here. We've tried really hard. Mickey has done an incredible job trying to find good staff. But we've had a rough year when it comes to health.
I have a question.
No, ma'am, please.
No, not yet? Oh, I thought we could, because he did, so, never mind.
I imagine Sheree's going to bring up the question, well, we don't have contract
We
labor.
don't use contract labor.
Right.
And
Long-term care does.
And we don't have CNAs, and we pay $16, $17 an hour. I just feel like, as much as we try in assisted living, we get lumped in with long-term care, who has excessive labor costs, and we don't. And I feel like you should have made this decision based on, maybe you could have kept the assisted living alive. And I'd be glad to talk to you guys about the things I know that would save money, but nobody looks at it. And I'll talk to you about that later in private, because I don't want to air dirty laundry.
Okay. We had a loss for Lakeview Gardens of $137,700 for a total of $1.4 million. That is through May. In the bright side of the business that we do, we also have the Lakeview Medical Supply, Lake Health Medical Supply. That's the durable medical equipment. It's located behind Safeway. They did $50 million, almost $51 million in the month of May. 51,000, my mistake. With expenses of 32,000 for a net profit of 17,000, or for the year 115,000. Sorry, got time. Any questions?
I do have a question. So, sorry, I think I misunderstood. I thought when we had, at the last meeting, the hospital loss that was the reason for the decision about Lakeview Gardens, the hospital loss was $2 million. But if I just heard correctly today, the hospital loss is $2 million, but Lakeview Gardens is an additional $1.4 million. So is the total loss $3.4 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Medical staff report. Dr. Graham, I don't see him here tonight.
Dr. Graham couldn't be here. What he wanted to have is, at the last medical staff meeting, they reviewed changes to their bylaws. And that was prepared in part by Sean. Sean, do you want to just comment about the changes to the bylaws for the medical staff?
Yes, sir. There was three major changes made to the bylaws besides the general updates having to do with the ORSs and OARs. The first was that the medical staff agreed to have the CRNAs as voting members. However, they cannot hold office within the medical staff. The next piece had to do with removing some of the old language. The current version of the bylaws still had long-term care as part of the facility here at the hospital. And the third piece had to do with defining what exactly constitutes on-call for our providers.
So during that meeting, they reviewed the changes and they voted to accept the bylaws changes. So now, in order to make those bylaws changes for the medical staff, finally, the board has to approve those. And they recommend that you would approve these bylaws.
I so approve the new updated bylaws for the medical staff.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the medical staff bylaws as recommended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Something to read. Okay. Tori, nursing report.
Well, I'll make it quick. I don't have any significant updates for you, but I do want to say, I know with contract labor and stuff, my departments are very conscious of the expense we're creating. So our effort to help with that is through making sure our documentation is done correctly so that the correct charges can be made. So we're closing out charts where we're making sure everything's complete. So we're spending a lot of time with staff to educate them in that and to keep them in the know. We're spending a lot of time looking at what we're charging on a daily basis to make sure we're not skipping or missing big things. So looking at ways to be more efficient. We're trying to keep our swing bed population up. We're going to be at 7 tomorrow. And just very aware of what it takes to run the hospital. So
We appreciate your
Thank you.
efforts and it's not an easy position to be in. And I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you so much.
Okay. With that, thank you. We have manager reports now. I see a number of managers here. Is there anything, any of you, Lisa, Vicki, or Sean, you want to add anything, or Amaran?
Unless you have questions for me.
Okay.
So just tagging on to Tori's explanation about educating our staff, the importance of charting. We, again, are working hard on that as well on the clinic side. And we are also, I just want to commend the primary care staff and the specialty clinic staff for working and trying to get our community served. We've gone from 790 patients who needed primary care down to 370 in June. And that's with the same amount of staff. So.
You mean who has a position assigned to it?
Yes, so please be assured that we are working diligently to get you the health care that you deserve.
Tyson, you anything? Anyone excited?
Nothing exciting in EMS.
There's always something exciting.
No, you're not out on the road right now, so.
This is true. That's a good day with more knowledge.
That's a good thing. So, if no more manager reports or questions from the managers, we'll go to the CEO report. Charlie, you're back on thoughts.
Okay, we have a couple of things. August 29, we will have, we received a grant from the Office of Rural Health to pay for J.B. Orlikoff, who is a national expert on board education. There are some special districts board training that will also be available for each of you if you want to participate in that. But you can make sure that your calendar is available on the 29th. He is the board chair for St. Charles, lives in Chicago. So when he comes out for board meetings, he sometimes can go out and provide his expertise to area hospitals.
Did we get the Burns board to come down?
I haven't got that yet. What I need to do is make sure that all of you could attend so that that day will work, because it's not a cheap country. And then I'll work on getting the Burns. We did this about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, where we all went up to Burns and he talked. But in Burns, they have 3 new board members. So I think they would be very interested.
I can tell you guys, it's gangbusters. It's really good.
It is.
Yeah.
He's an exceptional guy. So that's a good thing. It'll probably be about from 10 to 2 is the time I'm guessing. I don't know exactly, because if you recall, when we went up to Burns, you took that hour and a half, 2 hour drive. So they didn't start until then, and then they wanted to leave while it was still there. So I'm guessing that's what it is. We are working on the closure process for both the assisted living and long-term care. We meet with state and members from our team as well as the state to go over every individual's situation and review the case. So that process will continue weekly. Just did that yesterday. So, or I'm sorry, Tuesday. Thursday.
No. Tuesday was the 4th.
So then it was Wednesday, yesterday. Like I said, it was the day after the 4th, whatever day that was. We currently have 9 residents in assisted living and 14 in long-term care. We have a new resident from Cascades East. Please welcome, if you see him, Dr. George Brown. We've been having residents come here from Cascades East for years. And
Where's Cascades East?
That's in Klamath Falls, affiliated with Sky Lakes. That's where the OHSU residency in family practice training program, they come out here. They really like to come out here. They get a lot of experience. In fact, Dr. Brown, this was his first day, and he got to assist in a cesarean section. So that was a really good thing. And that's one of the reasons why they like to come out here as part of their training. And I think he'll be here for, is it 5 weeks? Tori, do you recall? So Dr. Newman was here just a couple of months ago. She was great, and everyone liked her. So I expect the same thing from Dr. Brown. This is the time of year that we do inventory. We do a lot of checks before the start of the new fiscal year. Clinton and his team did the audit, and the supply chain found that they had 1,172 items. The inventory value was $248,706. And their accuracy rate was 97.95%. So staying on top of it, making sure that we don't lose things when it comes in, and that they are able to spread all of the supplies that are needed throughout the entire organization. I think it's pretty good. Good job, Quentin and your team.
Thank you.
That's all I have right now, unless you have questions.
Sean, did you have something on the conflict of interest?
You should all have the annual conflict of interest form in front of you. That's something that's signed on an annual basis by all board members. I believe with the installment of our newest board members, tonight was the best night to go ahead and do that.
Okay.
I have to go home and grill my family after reading that.
Okay, so we'll get that done, so I just wanted to bring that up.
If you can get that back as soon as you can, reasonable time, that would be helpful.
Okay, with that, we are going to adjourn to executive session under ORS 192, 660, Bracket 2, Bracket A personnel, Bracket C, medical staff.
Yeah.